A little while back, we revisited Spooky's Jumpscare Mansion, a little indie horror game from the 2010s that has become a cult classic and is still loved to this day. It was a memorable experience, especially since it was the first time I actually finished the game, despite playing it a bit back when I was younger. With the base game under my belt, I figured it was time to once again descend that iconic elevator into Spooky's Mansion. In this video, we are looking at the game's two DLCs, Karamari Hospital and The Dollhouse. Are these expansions more terrifying than Escape from Tarkov's $250 price tag on their DLC? Let's not get crazy, but they are pretty scary. Not only that, but they do help us uncover more about Spooky's history, and spoiler alert, they get a bit emotional. We have a lot to explore today, so let's get started. We continue our journey to uncover Spooky's mysteries with Karamari Hospital. We start with a familiar site, room 995, the save room in the base game that comes right before our encounter with Specimen 9. Only this time, we don't get to step foot into room 996. If you thought the nightmare ended at room 1000, you are horribly mistaken. We fall, and keep falling until any sense of what floor we've just landed on dissipates. There's no number to reference, just a cold, empty corridor and the eerie sounds to indicate you're still far from safe. After going through a routine we've become so used to, we once again come face to face with Spooky herself.
I don't know how you got all the way down here. I didn't even remember there were rooms down here. Well, good luck.
Still as encouraging as ever, I see. But what horror awaits us behind that door? Huh. More hallways until we enter the hospital. We were told about the fabled restaurant that remained buried levels deep below the surface, but this is something else. There's no one working the reception desk, so I guess it's up to us to figure this place out. It's so sterile, so seemingly innocent, but from what we've seen so far, we can't fall for what we see on the surface. Let's start with the restrooms and see if we can't uncover anything about this place. Naturally, I have to check the stalls for any keys or notes, but there doesn't seem to be anything of interest. And we can't access the last stall. That's nice. The women's bathroom is blocked off, so we'll have to make our way elsewhere. The double doors to the left of the desk give me flashbacks to the school section in the base game. I feel like these sterile hospital rooms are just as, if not more uneasy than the classrooms, especially with these cryptic paintings. In one of these first rooms, we get our first note written by Dr. Hamada. The patient has displayed increased depression after being informed of their terminal disease. I prescribed an antidepressant to regulate this, but was later told that I had canceled the prescription. I have no memory of canceling the meds, nor can I find any evidence that my orders were tampered with. It seems there's more going on here than just helping the sick and injured. Entering the staircase, we get that classic eerie silence that most times indicates you're about to walk into something traumatizing. We're still only a couple of minutes into the game, so it can't be that bad. But it's not looking great. Heading into the break room gives us our first key of the game, a key to the office, and another note by Nurse Takada. It seems we are losing patients due to surgical complications much more often than normal. What have the doctors been doing? Half of these procedures seem completely unnecessary. I know the doctors and surgeons are above me and probably know things I don't, but this is getting strange. Leaving the break room and taking a right before heading back up the staircase leads us to this disturbing obstacle blocking our path. This is the virus. and it seems to be a reference to the shadow from Amnesia, The Dark Descent. Aside from listening to its disturbing sounds, we can't do much with it at this point, so we'll have to find a way around it. The double doors on the floor above are electronically sealed, meaning we have to find a power source to continue our journey. Unlocking the office with our first key takes us to another set of rooms, the first of which contains another note from Dr. Hamada. It seems the other me has been giving him large doses of hallucinogenics. They have worsened the depression, and he is now constantly screaming and expressing terror at seemingly random intervals. I've tried using a dialysis machine to remove some of the drugs, but it seems futile. To me, this almost seems like the birthplace for Specimen 9, and after learning about the Unit 731 reference, thanks to you guys, it seems highly possible, but the only way to find out what's going on here is to keep going. We get another note from Dr. Tochigi in a neighboring room. I was just informed that the procedure to extract the patient's liver became fatal. I don't know why. Why did we take his liver? There are no donation requests, and he was showing signs of improvement. The surgical staff told me I personally demanded the liver be removed for an emergency transplant, and the worst thing is, I found it. I found his liver. His entire liver just sitting on my desk. How these doctors are committing these acts and not remembering has to be Spooky's doing, or perhaps the work of something more sinister. We also get the maintenance key in this room, so that will be our next destination, and hopefully that will open up those double doors we came across earlier. Making our way into this next waiting area gives us a disturbing confession from Nurse Tanaka. I blacked out today while driving to work. 1 minute, I was driving down the road, and then in an instant, I was standing outside my car, staring down at a dead cat. I must have hit it with my car and felt sorry. The image of the dead cat has constantly unnerved me today. How did I manage to hit it in such a way to make the body completely twisted around like that? I wonder if this is the same cat we saw in our terrifying adventure through Spooky's the first time. There isn't much we can do here, seeing as how we still have to find the power source. This door is locked, and this isn't even a real door. And so we head back to the lower level and make our way to the maintenance room. Inside is a power generator that we have to turn off to access other parts of the hospital. Looks like everything is going as planned. Only one problem. This also shuts off the lights upstairs. How fun. But at least we can advance now. Another horrifying hallway, and an even worse sight as we enter the first room. Blood litters the floor and bed, and flickering x-rays give us a glimpse of the horrors that have occurred here. There are no clues here, just a story we probably don't want to know about.
Oh my god. Oh my god. Oh.
Yep, I think I was just jump scared by Popeye. The first specimen we encounter in Karamari Hospital is Monster 1, or the security guard. At this point, I don't know what it's capable of, so I play it safe. I wander around a bit, but deep down, I know I have to get past it. Returning to the second waiting area gives us a different scene. TVs playing static litter the corner near the double doors we can access now that the power is off. And here, we just get more bloodied and abandoned rooms, and this empty room with nothing more than a red chair. If you've played Karamari Hospital before, and you know what this is, don't worry, and don't spoil it. We'll come back to it. We once again come into contact with Monster 1, and it's here that I finally get a feel for its movements.
Okay, alright.
Kind of.
That's not gonna work.
At least we know it's slow. I tried to figure out what I'm supposed to do next while I try to get a sense of the monster's pattern, so I end up running around a bit until I finally come across a new staircase entrance. This takes us to the other side of the downstairs that's being blocked by the virus. I hate the sounds down here, and I'm not feeling too confident about entering rooms labeled morgue. This cannot end well for me. All I can think of at this point is the morgue area in Resident Evil 2 where you pull out the zombies, so I'm expecting these to sit up at any moment now. Luckily, that doesn't seem to happen, but if you've played any horror game before, you know that picking up a key item usually kicks things off.
No.
and the fact that there are no more body bags in the room with me makes me feel even worse.
Where's everyone going? Bingo?
Unfortunately, I can't turn back now, so the only option is to proceed down this disturbing aisle of bodies.
Ooh! Oh no!
And it looks like this is where the worst parts of the DLC officially begin.
Why?
You guys know how much I hate mazes,
Why does it have to be a maze?
so this was definitely one of the worst parts of the game for me, especially since I lose all sense of logic when I'm panicking.
Oh!
I will say I agree with everyone who said this theme was a banger.
Oh, this sucks. Oh, this sucks.
Surprisingly, not taking too much damage from Monster 2, we make our way back to the main hallway.
Oh my god.
And here, we get to see our next destination, the isolation room, but we'll need a key first. There's another short note down here from Nurse Tanaka. Something sinister is beating on the wall of my subconscious, beating like a war drum, motioning me to march down into hell. Another war reference here adds to the theory that what's happening in Karamari Hospital is an expansion on the Unit 731 reference. We also pick up a container of acid, and the only thing I can think of using this for is clearing the virus in the hallway. This makes it easier to navigate the basement section, just in case we have to run from anything else. When we get back to the main entrance, we get to speak to our old pal, Spooky again.
This place is much bigger than I thought it would be. It's very interesting. Well, keep going, recruit, and I'm sure you'll make it out. Maybe.
And she never ceases to inspire me. With the medallion in hand now, we can make our way to one of the first rooms in the office and place it into the empty slot on the plaque. This opens up a secret door and a path forward. I know I referenced Resident Evil a lot, but this reminds me so much of descending the stairs in Resident Evil 7. What makes these stairs so unnerving is the accompanying noises and the sudden bloodying of the walls and ceiling the lower you get.
Oh my god, I don't want to be down here.
And then we arrive at this weird, sauna-looking room. That's the best description I have. It feels cold. Why wouldn't the monster still be contained? No, that would make things way too simple. As we make our way through the foggy halls, we come across a Game Boy, and it's still charged. I think we've earned a little break. Never heard of this game, but it seems innocent enough. The premise of Sunshine Academy is that we've just transferred here from the United States and managed to make friends with a local student. I noticed that some of the responses don't match up with the dialogue selections, but according to the wiki, this was done on purpose. The game is nothing more than a visual novel / dating sim that starts out normal, but the dialogue gets more cryptic as the game continues, and eventually, Ume stops making any sense at all and begins to give us these weird responses and lose her facial features until the end of the game. One interesting thing I did notice was the reference to Ume living in the second house on the left. On the surface, this may not seem all that important, but remember how we got down here? We took the secret stairs found in the second office on the left. I'm not sure if this was on purpose or just a coincidence, but I found it interesting. Alright, that's enough gaming. It's time to get back to it. After walking for a bit, we come across another monster, Monster 3, which is this creepy, abnormally large baby head trapped in a steel box. There's not much to this monster, and you can make your way around it fairly easily.
Oh no, I'm good. Oh shit!
Unless you're me, of course. Making our way deeper into the area brings us to this endless hallway. This is said to be the home of Monster 6, otherwise known as Becca, but apparently she only appears in NewGame Plus, so we lucked out. We eventually arrive at another room with crates and a table. Here, we find the isolation key. Unfortunately, picking up this key also triggers the Monster 4 chase.
Oh!
And this thing is brutal, and you guys know me by now. I started sprinting trying to get away from this thing, but didn't make it very far at all. And to make matters worse, do you guys remember seeing me save once throughout our playthrough so far? Yeah, neither do I, because I didn't, so I have to start everything all over again. The first thing that came to mind was having to go through the Monster 2 chase all over again down in the morgue. Luckily, I managed to run my way through most of it fairly quickly this time, and I made sure to save before we went back to the lower levels. And it's a good thing that I did, because instead of trying to think of a proper strategy for escaping Monster 4, I tried the exact same thing, and to no one's surprise, ended up dying a handful of times. Eventually though, I realized that there was an actual mechanic to this thing, something in between Specimen 6 and 10 from the main game. This definitely made the chase easier, but it didn't make it any less tense. I take back what I said at the beginning. This was definitely the worst chase in Karamari Hospital. We're just lucky Monster 3 doesn't spawn at the same time as Monster 4. With the isolation key in our possession, it's time to make our way back to the main floor. But before we go any further, we definitely have to save. Unlocking the isolation room presents us with even more rooms to explore, and we get another note from Nurse Tanaka in the first room. It wasn't me. I swear, it wasn't. It may have been my body and my hands, but I know it wasn't me. In another room, we see more of the carnage that has occurred in the hospital, and in this room, another note from Tanaka. I found a way to stop them. You see, they are in my head and can control me for a time, but if I keep using the radiology machine to dose my head with radiation, then they go away for a while. It kind of sounds like Monster 4 could be Nurse Tanaka based on this note and the monster's appearance, and the hanged ghost we see prior to picking up the key. It could be that Tanaka couldn't take the horrors anymore and was driven to insanity. And speaking of insanity, this next section drove me crazy. At the end of the isolation room, we come across Monster 5's domain, a deformed floating cow that chases you through the maze. Why does it always have to be a maze?
Oh shit!
This thing is terrifying, and despite not being incredibly fast, the maze makes it a recipe for death.
Oh hell no. I'm so dead. It's over. It's so over.
When we finally make our way through the maze, we come across a gut-wrenching note, and from what I can gather, it appears to have been written by Spooky's father. I'm sorry, my little angel. I've tried hating the man who took you from us, but in the end, the only person I can hate is myself. You always liked to scare people, especially when they didn't understand something. I was confounded that no one understood your costume, but I guess people don't read Poe anymore, even with the new Price film. That man clearly overreacted to your fireworks, but we can only blame a PTSD sufferer so much. The reference to Spooky's costume comes from Edgar Allan Poe's Mask of the Red Death, an excellent short story I highly recommend if you haven't read it. Karamari gives us more context into Spooky's death, shot while playing a prank on Halloween, and a glimpse into why she is so vengeful. But something tells me that this isn't the full story, and we'll have to do some more investigating. So we take the exit key and prepare to leave the hospital.
Oh, there you are. I guess there are still some hidden things down here. Well, keep going, and we'll see what happens. Yeah. See you later.
And then we come to the end of Karamari Hospital. But before we move on to Dollhouse, I wanted to get some revenge on the creatures that caused me so much terror in our run, as well as show you a cool little Easter egg or two. So I decided to do a quick New Game Plus run. This run wasn't nearly as scary as the first, especially since I knew I'd be able to kill the monsters this time. During this run, we see Spooky in a different outfit at the beginning. This one is more suited for the environment. I also heard about this creepy Easter egg in the bathroom, so let's see what that's about. Yeah, I wish we would have skipped this one, to be honest. We have to get the office key before we can really enjoy the New Game Plus, so the first part of the run plays out similarly to our initial playthrough. Once we gain access to the office, we have to head into the room that has the secret entrance to the lower levels. Here, we interact with this portrait and obtain the sword. Okay, now we're ready to get our revenge. I'm not gonna lie, this is the same feeling I got running through Resident Evil 4 Remake after my first playthrough, where I was pretty much invincible. There are only 2 monsters that cannot be killed indefinitely. Monster 3 can be killed for a short time, but it will respawn, and Becca, aka Monster 6, can't be killed at all. Now that we've had our fun, I wanted to show you guys this cool little part of the game if you haven't already seen it. Coming back to this room with the red chair is Monster 7, or the scare chair. At first glance, there's nothing special about this chair, though it does seem out of place. You can walk over and sit on it, and if you're patient enough, you'll start to see these flecks on the screen, and a slight purple tint begins to appear. You have to sit in the chair for a while before you can see a bloody trail connecting the door to the chair. And then a little while later, you start to see a disturbing face smiling at you on the screen. Now, you can either sit here for another 10 minutes or so, after which you automatically stand up, or you can leave the chair manually. Once you do this, you'll notice a shadowy figure appear on the chair. According to the wiki, some believe this to be the player's soul. Now at this point, you can no longer sit in the chair since it's being occupied by the shadow. However, in this New Game Plus run, you can kill the shadow and once again, take back your throne. This second part plays out a bit differently. Instead of the scenes from our previous session, you are met with unsettling screams and violent shaking. After which, you meet your end. Apart from this, the run pretty much ends the same way. I know that some notes change if you kill monsters 1 and 2 to trigger the alternate ending to Karamari, but I kind of ran through it, so I'll put the notes here. And now that we've looked at the game's first DLC, we've only just started. Karamari Hospital was pretty straightforward and a good expansion on the story, but my favorite was definitely Dollhouse, and I'll show you why. We start the Dollhouse DLC in the corridors we seemingly left off in during Karamari Hospital. Upon cracking open the final door and finding ourselves in the dollhouse, we're greeted with some rather unfortunate news. The air here is heavy with must and mold. Your lungs seem to struggle as you inhale. Your ability to heal is hindered in this place. The atmosphere captures my attention right away. The eerie music, the filter overlaying the screen, and the home's aesthetics. This looks like it's going to be a dreadful but wonderful time. Almost immediately after entering the dollhouse, we pick up a map, and it's a lot larger than I imagined. Seeing as how the map is labeled Dollhouse Floor 1, I reckon we've yet to see the half of it. Congratulations, GL Lab Associate. You have been volunteered for our Proud Parent program. You have been given a doll, and your duty is to train the soul entrapped within. To confine it to the doll, you must keep it in good spirits and give it attention. Many of the beta candidates were children when they died and will likely attach themselves to you without problems, but there may be times when punishment or extraction of spirit energy is necessary. The energy can feel quite replenishing, but please, refrain from abuse as it negatively affects the ghost. In the event of husk rejection or injury, GL Labs is not responsible under any circumstance. Of course, what else could we expect from the trustworthy GL Labs? I take it this is our doll. These things always gave me the creeps, but I don't think we have a choice. It's here to accompany us on our journey, whether we like it or not. At least the paintings here are a little less disturbing than those in the base game and Karamari Hospital. Upon heading into this room, I noticed a clicking sound, but I couldn't figure out what the cause of this was. But never mind that. We have another note in here. I was a good girl all day long, but when Dad got home, he was all wrong. So, I hid in my room until he was gone, and then I shot him in the face at 5:45. His gun was so shiny, sparkly, and neat, and his face was so mushy, gushy, squishy. I wanted to shoot more people, but my mom made me sleepy. Now I'm in this weird house with all these weird white coat people, and they won't give me a gun. Okay, I take it back. I really hate these paintings. Wandering through the house a bit more, we stumble across another note in this room, discussing the difficulties GL Labs has faced in trying to find suitable vessels for the spirits. The piano room is where we find our first key item, the key to the west wing of the house, and upon leaving the room, we were surprised by this horrific thing.
Oh!
A husk.
What the fuck?
This early on in the game, I still wasn't 100% sure about what shaking the doll did, so you bet I was spamming it as I ran away from the husk. What makes these little guys even scarier is that they tend to move in groups. Definitely not the ideal way to start out this playthrough. I kept looking back to make sure they weren't able to go through doors and walls, and luckily, they can't. Point that I realized shaking the doll replenishes our health, but going back to what the note said from earlier, we don't want to overdo it. Like a dummy, I tried to get through this barbed wire door with my bare hands, and in combination with having these guys attack me, took significant damage. In my panic, I kept running into the wrong rooms, and these things were everywhere. I found myself in the storage room after some running around, so this is where they keep these things. Here, we see the glimmering of another key item next to this creepy thing. We pick up the winding clock key. We also wake Wormy Charles. Just when I thought the monsters at this place couldn't get any more disturbing. And this thing can sprint. But luckily, it seemed to appear in certain rooms and at random. I'll take these husks over Wormy Charles any day. With the winding clock key in hand, I planned out my route as best as I could. Unfortunately, not even a minute after ditching Wormy Charles, he makes an unwelcome return. We hide in the tea room, and here we get another note. This room functions to relieve stress and replenish spirit energy in the event that the doll has lost potency. You may use this function by placing the doll upon the pedestal and sitting across from it. And then again we get another disclaimer at the bottom stating that GL Labs isn't liable if you, well, you know, like die or anything. Cool. It looks like we know how to keep the doll in good spirits. The doll appears to be at full potency at the moment, but it was still nice to have this bonding moment, if you can call it that. Alright, we can't sit in here forever, even though I'd really like to. It appears Charles got bored of waiting for us, so we should try to get back to the clock room before he comes back again. Unfortunately, I spoke way too soon. As we make our way through the house, we come face to face with none other than Spooky.
Oh hey, there you are. I was wondering where you were. I had forgotten about this place. So many tortured souls are here. Well, anyway, I'm gonna go check on something. See you later.
I hate to say it, but at this point in our adventure, she's becoming sort of a calming presence, and I wish she would just join us, but I know she's not necessarily rooting for us. We finally come back to the clock room. Here, we have to input the time mentioned on that grim story about the daughter ending her father's life, and this is what opens up the clock and gives us the cutters we need to gain access to that barbed wire door. Cutting the barbed wire and going through the door leads us to the garden. And the first thing we see here is a headstone and a note. My dear Monica, although it was difficult, I've respected your wishes and let you rest. I miss you every day. I miss you so much. I'm still going to try to save our daughter. I know it's not what you wanted, but I've already gone too far. She's so close. I just have to find a way to keep her here. I love you. I think we all know who Monica, the daughter, and the author of the note are. We can't access this door to the right yet, so we have to head to the left, where we enter the Great Hall. Here is where we'll restore the power and move on to the next section. There seems to be some sort of barrier set up around the entry. Could this be to keep the spirits in? Putting the doll on the pedestal in this room activates the barrier, so it's safe to assume whatever was trapped in here is most likely no longer contained. More signs of Charles here, so that's something to look forward to. The Great Hall is also home to this terrifying clown. Luckily, it's a harmless entity, and though there is a chance it can appear in certain rooms, this is the only time I saw it, and good thing, because our doll didn't seem to be a fan. Exiting the clown room and entering the nearby one presents us with another note. I haven't told anyone yet, but I think this place is haunted. There are like these strange weaning sounds all the time, like a moan, but also like a whoa, you know? So, moaning, and there was this painting that I kept staring at that I think was changing. This seems to be the same doll from the painting, and it follows your every move in here, which is rather unsettling. We come across another pedestal on which we can place the doll, once again opening up a GL Labs branded door. This brings us to the furnace room, but at the moment, we're missing a key item, so we'll have to come back later. The next room we enter somehow gets even creepier than the last. This time, we have a group of dolls littering the shelves and the floor. And another note, a doll is a timeless thing, in the shape of a human, but created perfect, immortal and unmoving, yet hollow, devoid of soul, a fitting symbol and possibly usable device for our goals here. Soon, I will have you back, my dear, but first, I must make sure it won't constrict you. In a neighboring room, we come across the broken doll hands, and this is what we need to take back to the furnace room. We use the furnace to melt the hands and get the metal key, and then we get another encounter with Spooky.
Oh, hey! I was thinking you might want some help. So, I moved all those dolls out of the way. Well, have fun!
Gee, thanks, Spooky. This doesn't look dangerous at all. Placing the doll on the pedestal, as we know, turns on the barrier, which awakens the husks. Luckily, we can just run past them, but it didn't make this encounter any less disturbing. And now, we can finally access the next part of the house. And we find ourselves in the infamous GL Labs. It's nice to see that these posters are making another appearance. In this first room, we also get to play on a new arcade machine, R.I.P. Doug. The game starts with a memorial page to the late GL Labs scientist, and upon entering the game, you'll notice it's inspired by Dig Dug. If you die, you get this simple end screen. The note in this room reveals that the dolls aren't enough to bring Spooky back. Instead, an old relic was discovered, and ultimately used by Spooky's father to try and bring his daughter home. This next note confirms the abandonment of the dolls, and from context, we can gather that this is referring to the original mansion in the base game that became Spooky's eternal home. It also hints at her father's demise. I need this for my room. Exploring GL Labs further reveals an escape tram, and this is definitely where we want to be. However, it looks like we have a job ahead of us in order to access it. We explore the corridors some more until we fall into a hole, leaving us stranded in perhaps the scariest part of the entire dollhouse, the root cellar. There's not much we can rely on down here. No map, no light, no sense of direction. We see a bunch of these black candles down here, but we can't pick them up, at least not yet. Our main goal right now seems to be finding a way out of this place before something finds us. We find a piece of a metal pinwheel stitched to this doll, and while I know we need it, I hesitate to pull it off in fear that will anger some sort of spirit. But it looks like we're safe. For now, we set out to collect these pinwheel pieces and complete the pinwheel we'll need to access this door. We come across another note, but it's not of much use. And this room houses the next part of the pinwheel once we slide this metal plate over the opening. What could have come out of that hole? With it being open all this time, I don't even want to think about it. I grew increasingly more paranoid the entire time I was down here, which made it hard to find the last piece of the pinwheel. I felt like I had lost all sense of direction by this point, and I didn't know from which door I just came. Eventually, we stumble across another note in a new room. These spirits get so temperamental. We keep having to perform rituals to keep them in check. When they act out, it's necessary to inflict pressure on the husk inhabited by the spirit. Don't forget that these dolls are not real people. Well, sure, but that doesn't mean that they can't hurt real people. Upon returning to this room with the weird sculpture that I dismissed as another creepy painting, I learned that we can actually hit it to uncover the next pinwheel piece. Doing so triggers a slight jump scare, a warning of what's been released into the root cellar. But we finally access this locked room, which gives us the GL Labs keycard. Okay, let's get the hell out of here. Ascending these stairs reminded me of the similar path we had to take down to the lower levels in Karamari Hospital. Upon returning to the West Wing via this route, we're immediately greeted by Charles. It looks like he missed us. I spent a lot of time planning my routes while in the West Wing, minimizing the encounters I could have with the husks and would-be Charles himself. And this time, I didn't forget to save. We get a rather unpleasant visit from Frenzy, an entity that appears in certain rooms when you either don't take care of your doll or aren't holding it. But nothing was going to stop me from ending this. After all, I had the GL Labs keycard. The key to escaping this nightmare was in my hands. All I had to do was make it to the escape tram, and it would all be over. I went back for the doll and took her to the tea room to recharge and have one last bonding session. It deserved that much for all its help. Once recharged, and with my escape route memorized, I made my way to the tram and began my ascent. I've never felt such relief. Wait, why did we stop? What's that noise?
Oh! No, 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 no!
Unfortunately, it appears I missed a great deal of steps in this first playthrough, so we load our game and try things a bit differently. I believe we need to visit this old relic, and that's where we'll finally get our answers and be able to make our escape from this place.
Oh, hey. I don't like it here. You should probably just leave.
Okay, Spooky's acting weird, so this has to be the way.
There's nothing for you here. Just leave.
The seal is almost complete, and then you can return to me. It requires a nightmare to work, so I will surrender mine. The same nightmare that took you from us will now bring you back. And just a few feet away from this note lies Spooky's father. Are we finally about to uncover the mystery behind this tortured family? Behind GL Labs, behind Spooky, the seal can be turned off, but if I do this, I'll have to let the doll spirit go. There's no going back after this. Erase the nightmare? What's the worst that can happen? After all, we've already seen the bad ending, right? We're transported to the nightmare, where we must relive the memory burned into the father's brain, where we must recount the tragic events that took his daughter from him and his wife. Armed with a rifle, we make our way through the labyrinth and are confronted with these nightmares. They don't seem capable of killing us, but we can still shoot them down. This nightmare sequence itself reveals the side of Spooky's father we didn't know about a man fighting with PTSD, and if we connect the dots, no, it couldn't have been him. There's just no way. We have to get out of here. It all makes sense now. The M1 Garand rifle in the nightmare sequence, a weapon used in the Vietnam War. The empty bottles littering the nightmare sequence, pointing to a struggle with addiction, and the guilt penned into each note written by Spooky's father. She wasn't killed by some random person, like her father wrote about. Spooky died at his hand. After coming back to, we were met with a timer and an ominous voice telling us the facilities are about to be destroyed. The only way out is the tram. Standing at the entrance appears to be Spooky's bloodied body, stuffed into a bag. A haunting reminder of the events we've just learned about. But we can't let that stop us now. We need to leave. Surely, we'll make it out this time. With the seal broken, the spirits trapped in the mansion can go free. However, the gate to hell was left open. A flood of terror spills outward. The horrors that were once contained within the mansion can now reach the surface. You have escaped into a doom world, the true bad ending. What did we miss? We load the game a third time and take a different approach. There's a step we need to take before activating the relic. We have to visit the ritual circle and close the hell gate. Unfortunately, it's not as simple as it sounds. We seem to be missing a few candles. Candles we've seen somewhere else. Shit. It looks like we're heading back down, and hopefully, for the final time. As soon as we enter the root cellar, we are attacked by the hooked doll. And as we've learned through my experience with specimen encounters, I didn't take the time to learn about the mechanics, and it killed me. Upon further research, the strategy here is to avoid direct eye contact with the doll, which made finding the candles that much harder and more tense because I was basically looking down at the floor the entire time. I felt so bad for the doll here. When I found the final candle, I booked it to the exit. This time around, you skip the staircase and are instead spawned right into the West Wing corridor. And since we're already here, I saved a couple of times, just in case. Okay. Let's start the ritual. Placing the candles brings back power to the nearby computer, and here we see some familiar silhouettes. We have to select a specimen to summon, and we're given the option between specimens 4, 8, and 6. I decided to go with 6 because, if I was putting myself into a chase, I felt confident this one would give me the least amount of trouble. But it did make for one long and tense sequence, though it was kind of funny that I could just knock him down with the axe. I ended up completing most of this chase, walking backwards, and that seemed to make it a little bit easier. We eventually complete the ritual, and are transported back to GL Labs. With the computer broken, it's safe to assume that we've closed the Hell Gate. We power the relic, and once again have to relive the heartbreaking nightmare. If you didn't know, you can also relive this tragedy with the secret arcade machine in the base game. we complete the nightmare for the final time and say goodbye to it all. This time, for good. With the seal broken, the spirits trapped within the mansion can now go on, and with the hell gate shut, the terrors that seep through begin to fade away. Spooky has moved on and rests with her parents now. Somehow, despite all the horror within the mansion, you brought peace to it all. Thank you so much for exploring these Spookies DLCs with me. This was my first time playing through these, and I really enjoyed the added context to the lore behind Spooky, her tragic death, her father's guilt, the beginnings of the mansion, and the end of the horrors. Dollhouse especially helped tie everything together nicely and gave us a satisfying end to a rather tragic story. If I missed anything, please let me know in the comments below. I really enjoyed reading your comments in the previous video and learning about all the fun Easter eggs and references. And if you're new to the channel and enjoyed the video, feel free to stick around. I'd love to have you. Also, make sure to check out our exploration of the main game. I think you'll enjoy it. That's all for this video. Thank you again for all the support and patience while I worked on this project. I'll see you in the next one.